Guys, we're going to go ahead and start with our first set of notes for 1.1. So if you will do me a favor, go ahead and write what you see on the screen. If you need more time, just pause it so you can do that. I'm going to jump ahead. All right, so our first lesson is solving multi-step equations. A couple things we're going to need to be able to do that is knowing what distributing means and what solving means. Okay, so distributing means multiplying one value, only one number, or x, that's outside of a parentheses, and we're going to multiply it by everything that's inside the parentheses. When I do that, you're going to see me make this symbol. What that's doing is it's showing me where I'm multiplying to. So if I took negative 3 and I multiply it by x, that's going to give me negative 3x. If I do that same thing and take negative 3 times a positive 7, I would make a negative 21. Therefore, my answer is negative 3x minus 21. Now, we are not going to do this step every time, okay? All I need to see is your boxed answers. It should be one step, okay? So the same thing for number 2. 2 times 4x, 2 times 4 makes 8. We only have 1x. Distribute to the second term. 2 times a negative 1 would make a negative 2. That's my final answer. Problem number 3, we add a little bit of an extra step here, okay? Now the rule was you only distribute the one value that's next to the parentheses, okay? So that's this guy right here. Positive 5 is my only number that's next to the parentheses. So I'm going to do that first. I'm going to distribute 5 times 2 is 10, and that's a positive 10. 5 times a negative x, positive times a negative makes a negative, so negative 5x. That 2x, he's not doing anything. This 2x is just going to drop down. That makes a 2x. Now, if you remember back from middle school, and I'm going to change colors real quick, we are not allowed to have x's that are like this, both in the same line. We're told to do something with that, and it's called combine like terms. So I'm going to go ahead and write combine like terms underneath that. So if I do 2x minus 5x, that's the same as doing 2 minus 5. You can use a calculator if you need to, but we're going to go ahead and write that as negative 3x. And then since the 10 didn't change at all, we're just going to bring him down, plus 10. That right there is my final answer. Okay. So number 4, we've got a very similar thing. Who do you think we would box in this equation? Who's distributing? Some people might say it's the 4, but here's the problem. What kind of 4 is that? That's going to be a negative 4. So if I take negative 4, I'm going to distribute him. Negative 4 times x, negative 4x. Negative 4 times a positive 3 is going to make a negative 12. Okay? 7 didn't move. 3x didn't move, so we're just going to drop them down. They're not doing anything. So in this problem, we have a few things to combine. We talked about combining our x's, negative 4, positive 3. That makes a negative 1x. Or actually, let's just write negative x. We don't really need that little 1 there. Ooh, again. There we go. Okay, what else can we combine? Hopefully you noticed that the 7 and the negative 12 are also like terms. They're both just constants. So think about that like 7 minus 12. That would give us a negative 5. So in the long run, this is my final answer. If you missed anything, take a second, go ahead and write that down. We're moving on to solving. All right, so solving, a lot of you have seen this in middle school. We can do it with 1 step, with 2 step. Most of you are pretty confident with this amount of work, okay? So having to remove 2 numbers in order to get x by itself, okay? So let's talk about solving. The whole idea of solving is you are undoing or reversing the order of operations. So if we want to cancel addition, we would use subtraction, vice versa. If we want to cancel multiplication, we're going to use division because they're opposites, okay? So let's go ahead and jump into our first one. If I'm trying to get that x by itself, one way that I think about that is I think about it like a party. I want to get the x by itself. It's his party. 4, this is his best friend. I'm going to put bestie. Okay? if you're having a party and your parents come home, are you going to kick your best friend out of the party first? No. You're going to kick this loner guy. You're going to kick him out first. Okay? So if we think about it that way, who would I kick out of the party first? I'd kick out the 1. So how do I cancel out plus 1? I'm going to cancel that with a minus 1. And I'm sure you've heard the rule before, but what you do to one side, you must do to the other. I'm hoping that that's what you said in your head. So if I do the same thing to the other side, what happens with the 1s? They're going to cancel. Then I can write down what I have left. 15 minus 1 makes 14. Bring down my equal sign. Nothing happened with the 4x yet, so I bring down 4x. Okay. Our next step, we're still trying to get x by itself. So our next step is we're going to go ahead and get rid of our best friend. It's our party. It's over. People are leaving. That 4 is going to leave next. So what is that 4 doing with x? That 4 is actually the same as saying 4 times x. That's multiplication. So if the 4 is multiplying, how would we cancel it? We would divide. That's the opposite. We are not going to use this symbol at all in Algebra 1. Okay, you will not use that again. The way we write it is like a fraction. We're not going to do them diagonals. We're going to do them directly underneath it. So fraction on both sides. I'm going to show that I'm dividing by 4 on both sides. And then we can move to our next step. Okay, so 4 divided by 4 makes a 1. Therefore, we have just 1x left over. They cancel it out. But 14 doesn't divide by 4, not evenly. So if I type in my calculator, Control Divide, type in 14 over 4, and press Enter, it's going to simplify that fraction, and it's going to give me 7 over 2. This is the answer I expect to see in your notes. Same example answers that I expect to see on your homework. Okay, let's go ahead and look at number 6. Okay, so on number 6, same idea. We're going to look at which side the x is on. He's on the left. We're going to be thinking about this like who's the bestie? I'm going to put BFF. And who's the loner? Well, the loner's -6, yeah, but he's not even at the party. He's over on the other side. We're not worried about kicking him out of anywhere. Okay, that makes this little 8. That's my loner. So who would I kick out first? I'm going to cancel out the 8. Because it's adding, we're going to subtract. What I do to one side, I have to do to the other, but that means the other side of the equal sign. Okay, so I'm going to do my -8 over here. You might need a calculator on this one because when the 8's cancel, we have to do -6 minus 8. Okay, -6 minus 8 is going to give us a -14, and we're bringing down the -2x. All right, again, -2 times x. This is the same. -2x, -2 times x. They mean the same thing. So if we look at that one, then we want to divide both sides by a -2, just like we did before. The -2's are going to divide. When you divide by itself, it makes a 1, so we have just 1x left over. -14 divided by a -2, those two negatives are going to cancel. 14 divided by 2 makes a 7. That's our final answer. Okay. All right, 7 and 8, they might look a little bit alike, but they are actually very different. Okay, that's the difference between, I'm going to write this, don't write this. That's the difference between a baby fraction and a big fraction. Okay, and the difference here, I really want you to look at this. The difference between a baby fraction and a big fraction is talking about who my loner is. Okay, if I zoom into number 7, and I'm only worried about guys on the same side with x, only people at the party. Who is the loner? Who looks like they're not with x, they're just hanging out kind of on their own? That's this 1. Okay, the x and the 5, they're kind of in their own level. They're separate. The 1 is by itself. Okay, but if I come over here, that 1 isn't off by himself. Not the one that's at the party. The x and the 1, they're both together. They're combining. Okay, they're right there at the top. This 9 actually is our loner. He's on the level all by himself, okay? So when it comes time to solve this, it's going to change a little bit on who we get rid of first. These problems will not be solved the same way. So let's go ahead and start with number 7. If I'm kicking the loner out of the party first, who or how would I do that? The 1 is adding, so we need to subtract. What you do to one side, you have to do to the other. The 1s are going to cancel, and we're going to get to bring down what we have left. 3 minus 1 is going to make a 2. X over 5 is still there. We didn't do anything with that yet, okay? So if I was to ask you what would we do next, well, we got to get rid of the 5. Remember that if you say over 5, that's the same as divide by 5, okay? So if that 5 is dividing, how would we cancel it? You're right, multiplication. Now, we're not going to do times 5. That's not how we write it in algebra. You won't write it like that anymore. What we need to do instead is we need to do times 5 on one side, times 5 on the other side. When you multiply a number and divide it at the same time, they are going to end up canceling. So 5 and 5 cancel. We're going to end up with just 1x left over. 2 times 5 is going to make us a 10. So that right there is our final answer. Now, number 8 is going to be similar, but it's not going to be the same order because where we start is going to look a little bit different, okay? So let's go ahead and look for who we're going to cancel first on number 8. Number 8, the loner, is the 9 that's in the bottom. And what's that 9 doing? Good, that 9 is dividing, so same as dividing a 9. If we want to cancel out a divide by 9, that means we need to multiply. So if I do multiply by 9 on the outside, just like we talked about, what's going to happen with those 9s? There's no parentheses, so I'm not distributing. We're not doing that. All I'm doing is trying to cancel out the 9. That's it. So if I say what's left, well, all I have left is x plus 1. The 9s are gone. There's no division anymore. And on the right side, 1 times 9 is 9. So now how would I cancel out the 1? Subtract a 1 from both sides. Oops, I need to change my color. Subtract the 1 from both sides. The 1s are going to cancel off, and my final answer, x equals a positive 8. We are all set with that problem. All right, if you missed anything, take a second, go ahead and write that down, and I'll meet you on the next page. All right, I'm going to zoom out for just a second. Take a minute on the next page, write down those 5 steps. If you need some more time, go ahead and pause the video. All right, so we have 3 more questions left. These are called multi-step equation. Multi-step because they have more than 2 steps. Okay, so we're going to do the same 2 things that we've been talking about. We're going to distribute first, combine like terms of anything that we have, and then we're going to solve it the same way that you just did. Combining and distributing takes that big equation and it simplifies it down into something we can work with. So let's go ahead and look at that. First step says we need to distribute. Our distributing is our 3. He's the only number touching a parenthesis. 3 times 2x makes 6x. 3 times 1 makes 3. And it's a positive, so we put a plus. Nobody else does any distributing, so all I'm going to do is drop them right down beneath where they are. Okay? Our next step is to combine, and we've been talking about combining. We said we got to look for all the x's to go together. 6x plus 2x would make 8x's. Same thing here. A positive 3 and a minus 10 would make a negative 7. Now, why do you think I did not combine them with the 25? If you said it's because it's on the other side of the equal sign, you are absolutely right. We're going to leave that 25 alone until we start solving, okay? All right, so going into our next step. Who's the loner at the party? That's going to be our 7. So to cancel out a minus, we're going to add 7 to both sides. 7s will cancel, and that will make a 32. 25 plus 7, the 8x just came down. We have one more step in our solving journey. We need to get that 8 out of there. Okay, so in order to do that, we need to cancel it out by dividing. What I do to one side, I have to do to the other. So we're going to divide by 8. The 8's are going to cancel out, which gives us just 1x. And 32 divided by 8 makes 4. This is our final answer. Okay, I'll give you a chance at the end to come back and fix anything you missed. Number 10. This one's a little tricky. I'm trying to trick you. So if you look on this problem and you say, who's the number next to the parentheses that I can distribute? You might say 3, but you got to be careful. What kind of 3 is that? It's all -3. So if I take a -3, this whole thing right here, and I distribute, now I have to watch my signs. -3 times 4c makes a -12c. -3 times -2, well, 2 negatives make a positive when they multiply. So +6. Now, we have a lot of pieces that didn't get used. The 7's going to come down. The -c is going to come down. And the equals 26 is going to come down. What do we look for next? Well, we're going to look and see if there's anything we can combine. I look right ahead at the variables, and it looks like we got a couple of c's. So I'm thinking -12 minus just 1c. Okay, if you type that in your calculator, you're going to get -13 c's. Well, I also have some constants. I have some 7 and plus 6 more. Don't use the 26. He stays away right now. But 7 plus 6 is going to make a +13. We're going to bring down our 26 that we haven't used yet, and we are ready to start solving. So at the party, I want to know who the loner is. 26 isn't at the party, so my loner has to be that +13. I'm going to go ahead and subtract 13 from both sides. What I do to one, I have to do to the other. Bring down what we have left, -13c. And then 26 minus 13 leaves us with a regular +13. We have one more step in this problem. We need to get c by itself, which means getting rid of this guy. I want you to make a note right here. This is not subtraction. Okay? That is saying -13 times c. That's multiplication. So how do I cancel multiplication? I need division. So we're going to divide by a -13 on both sides. Again, not subtraction, it's division. So if I type that in my calculator, 13 divided by a -13, that's going to give me a 1, except it will be negative in this case. So my answer is -1. Okay. All right, last problem. Starting with distributing, I'm looking for any number that is touching the parentheses. But there is no number. So how am I supposed to get rid of parentheses if there's no number to distribute? Well, let's look real close. If I had to put a number right here, it would be negative what? Okay, I call it a ninja one. And if you want to write that, you are welcome to. I call it a ninja one. There is always a number on touching a parentheses if you see one. If you can't see the number, it's a -1. Okay, so let's go ahead and distribute that. -1 times 2x, that's going to give us -2x. And a -1 times another negative, that's going to make a +3. Again, 5x didn't do anything yet, 7 didn't do anything, and neither did the 40. So what's our second step? We're looking for things to combine. I see 5x's and a -2x. 5 minus 2, we probably don't need a calculator. That's going to give us 3x's. 3 plus 7, not the 40, just 3 and 7. Probably don't need a calculator. That's going to give us 10. Once we have combined everything possible, we are ready to solve. So at the party, who's the loner? It's not the 40. 40's not at the party. It's not the 3 because 3 is the best friend. He's stuck to x. So it's got to be the 10. To cancel out addition, we're going to subtract on both sides. What I do to one, I have to do to the other. So we are left with 3x equals 30. We have one more step in order to make sure we get our answer all the way done. How do I get rid of the 3? Well, it's multiplying, so I need to divide. And what I do to one side, I have to do to the other. Those 3's are going to cancel out. 3 divided by 3 makes 1, so I have just 1x. 30 divided by 3, we get lucky, it's a whole number. X is our 10. Okay? I'm going to zoom out. If you missed anything on those problems, go ahead, take a second, pause the video so you can see it. There's 11, there's 10, and there's